In a previous video, we discussed the concept of ANOVA, one-way ANOVA and two-way ANOVA. And in this particular lecture, we're going to pick up from there and discuss repeated measures ANOVA. So we're going to be using a sample data set that will hopefully illustrate how this particular technique is applied. So let's begin. Here is our data set we're going to be using, and we're going to walk through this together in SPSS, but a little bit about this particular methodology as it's applied. A repeated measures ANOVA, it's similar to a paired t-test in that it samples from the same set more than once. So as you can see here, we have these are IDs of individuals on the left, and then these are samples which we're taking from a particular individual within our example study. These are sample observations as it relates to a particular individual. So this is individual one. This is the sample as it pertains to our first category, our sample as it pertains to the second category, and the sample as it pertains to the third category. Now, the models contain one factor at least two levels, and the levels are dependent. So what do I mean by this? Well, these variables here, before reading week one and week two, these are our levels. So we have three levels: before reading, week one, and week two as it relates to this particular example. So let's talk a little bit about this example, and we'll go ahead and we'll apply the methodology in SPSS. So researchers want to test the impact of reading existential philosophy on a group of 8 individuals. They measure the happiness of the participants 3 times, once prior to reading, once after reading the materials for a week, and once after reading the materials for 2 weeks. We'll assume an alpha value of 0.05. So let's go and we'll apply this methodology in SPSS. And also, if you needed the data as it relates to this particular exercise, it's in the video description below. It's in CSV format, so you're going to have to change that over as you import it for your needs. So here's our data again. And what we're going to need to do to apply the repeated measures ANOVA, or repeated measures analysis of variance, as it's also known, is we're going to go to Analyze. We're going to go to General Linear Model, and we're going to go to Repeated Measures. So let's reset this and start anew. Reset. Okay. So here is our factor 1. This is what is default populated in the within subject's factor name box. We need to specify the levels. Now, as you recall, there's 3 levels: before reading, week 1, and week 2. So just count the number of categorical observations. So we have 3 factor levels. Okay, we're going to then click Add, and now we click Define. So now we have to specify those particular levels for our within subjects variables. So again, our factor is defined, and now we just need to define the level. So level 1 is before reading. That's our first point in time. Then 1 week out is week 1. That's our next level. There we go. And week 2 is our next level. So we've defined our number of levels and what those levels are. And once we have that completed, we just go ahead and click OK. So we have a whole bunch of output here, but what we're primarily concerned with is this bit: tests of within subject effects. So with this, we're now ready to interpret the output and write up our conclusion in APA format. So let me go back to our slides then, and we'll go from there. Let's get those slides back up here. Whoa, there we are. So we have our spherically assumed row, and we're concerned with the degrees of freedom, which is 2, and 14, the F value, and the significance level. And remember, we used a value of alpha for 0.05. So if the value of our significance is above 0.05, we will not reject the null hypothesis. So we're looking for a significant shift. It looks like I have reading comprehension here, but if we're doing the existential philosophy example, we're going to be interested in happiness. I think we're looking at happiness of an individual based on how much existential philosophy they were reading. But if we were doing reading comprehension, we would think of, I suppose, reading comprehension scores after a certain duration of reading. So again, with repeated measures ANOVA, we're doing duration. All right, so this was before reading, week 1 and week 2, and we have to keep in mind that these scores relate to a single individual throughout the duration of the study. So our findings would be, if we were doing it with reading comprehension, a repeated measures ANOVA determined that reading comprehension scores were not significantly different across weeks. And then here is our degrees of freedom, our F value, and our significance. And if this was the initial example that we were going through as far as it relates to existential philosophy, duration, and happiness, we would say that a repeated measures ANOVA determined that reading existential philosophy was not significantly impacting happiness. And then our same values, degrees of freedom, F value, and significance. All right, so just make sure that you write up your findings in the appropriate APA format. Make sure you refer back to whatever your experimental question was. And that is going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw here, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for stopping by and have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.